Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Saturday, 1st of June, 2024. The year when schizogenic insanity was normalized. When understanding became its opposite. Where ignorance and the polarity of abject opinionated ignorance and the light of the origins of intelligence and insight flipped over so that the former took the throne of the latter in our cultures and consciousness and thought and language, as I've been seeing many examples of today. And yet there are bastions of insight and awareness, learning, discovery, growth, self-correction. And the mutual encompassment of inquiry. Amon Hillman recently said something so right. He's like, you're not going to believe me, bro, but this word history, it comes from a Greek root that means asking a question, of an oracle. An oracle. The living spirit of insight, divine wisdom, embodied in a young woman in ancient Greece. An oracle. History was a question, not a declaration, not a record of the authorized version of what had been a dream. I was listening this morning to messages from my friend Tim Sanderson, brilliantly embodied, soulful, heartful, more than human being. His voice is so soft, and he complains that he was never really an intellectual, never truly an academic, but was lost instead in the reveries of his fervent imaginings. And I was like, the whole, 78% of the amphitheater of my ancestors stood up in their graves. We're like, yes! Wah! Wild cheering ensued. Though, both paths, the intellect is profound when it's funded by its origins, when it reveres its origins in dreaming and emotion and passion. And part of that passion is the quest the quest for the superposition above the concept of justice. If the concept of justice means, or is taken to mean, is clumsily and crudely taken to mean a kind of accounting where transgressors must be called to task and made to pay because apparently wrongdoing is a banking system, right? This sort of insanity, this branch on the upside down burning tree of ignorance, flagrantly masquerading as propriety, purity, is perennially horrifying. We see the results today in specific conflicts I will not here name. We see this reenacted, devastating nonsense masquerading as justification, wherever that may happen. And it happens in me. I'm familiar with the stink of this, the fingerprint, the poisoned, the poisoned fingerprint of my own thumb at the beginning of some crime scene where I decide vengeance will be mine. Retribution will be the spirit of the day, you know. And it's not that there's no place for that. Rather, its place should be rare at best, at most, and funded by brilliant insight, not regimented ignorance, structured into rules and laws and things. You know, the quest is for understanding exceptionally profuse throat clearing, apparently. Honking in the intersection, right? And throwing the children off the bridge into the river to teach them to swim. Just had to get the little ones in there because, you know, apparently everyone forgets they're alive or pretends that something else is going on. Not everyone, but the collectives, definitely. Just like, children, who cares? Boom! Guns! Blow it up! Destroy those mothers for the sake of some declaration. Obliterate them. Blood and gore. Fields of broken bones. Chaos. Yeah, if that's the mark of sanity or intelligence among the humans, then get me off this planet, please. Which, you know, for many sensitive and intelligent children is the slogan they'd wear on their t-shirt. How could I have been born on a planet where the humans treat each other like a lawn that just needs a good mowing? And yet at the same time, there's clearly some truth behind that delusion. The idea of harrowing that we find in certain misconstrued biblical texts is nonetheless important. We do actually not eat the chaff of the wheat. Right? We eat the tender seed inside it and are thus nourished, and our generations are rejuvenated by the magic therein. Meanwhile, the highly sensitive person sees the box of cream of wheat as scream of wheat. The screaming of the plants as they're scythed in the fields, back when we used to actually have to manually harvest food or grain. Meanwhile, these people are feeding ducks bread, which, you know, maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. Pretty sure that those straight up carbs are poison to waterfowl, but these are city waterfowl, so who knows? And why should I trust my own biases and judgments? The world is complicated. It's like a million spider webs intersecting, and you try to what? Determine the value of the intersections via some combination of emotional valence and rational thought. Okay. Hopefully the emotional valence is actually there and veritable, and not just the result of doubling down on previous biases and resentments and triggerings and so forth. The dopamine ratchet, right? The neurochemical ratcheting that we undergo via media and spectacle, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, what a more ironic, the collective mangling of intelligence of many twits. A crowd of twits. Of course, there are brilliant voices in the morass. There are those of us who, well, I counted myself among them. Did you see what I did there? There are those of us who courageously, steadfastly hold the line in the cataclysm of ignorance and opinionation we call social media today. I'm actually trying to understand, and one of the things that became clear to me when I listened to the dulcet tones of my friend Tim this morning was just how that he doesn't stray from his embodiment when he speaks. And when he says, I couldn't, I appreciated, and sort of, he doesn't say, I'm putting words in his mouth, but he meant something that resembles, I revered beautiful examples of intellectualism and in academia, but I'm not a Library of Alexandria. I'm a dreamer, right? And what's so beautiful about that that comes to mind for me, that I take from it, is a couple of things right away, a couple of things immediately. And the first is that the origin of the possibility of memory and intelligence lies in dreaming. Dreaming, it is the activity of angels in our minds that tend the gardens of memory so that they flourish and thrive and blossom and fruit. That imagination he speaks of is primordially fundamental. And there's no such thing as intellect without it. So what he's really saying is, in my view, is I revere the primordial origins from which the possibilities of intellect spring. I remain true to these. I adore these. I belong to these. To them, to their spirit, to their action, to their bodies. I am theirs. They are mine. We are one. And that's profound, beautiful. I agree. I contrasted myself. I was like, after singing the praises of his failure to dissociate into his intellect, I talked about my own, weaknesses of such a form, where my intellect is like a UFO, and I wake up in the morning and it's glowing there in the center of the room, and I trace the sigils on the unbroken surface of this egg-shaped sphere. A door appears with blinding light surrounding it. It becomes a portal. I step in, and boom, I'm out of my body. I'm in wild, transcendental, dissociative ecstasies far above my mundane soma, right? My flesh, my nervous system, my bones, my organs. And they're like, wait, what just happened here? Darren he's already dead? Because that's sort of what's going on. I'm in a way, I'm transported. I'm in the spirit world before my passing. I'm seeing from after my death back into my life. And it doesn't require drugs, it just requires ideas and language and my passionate fascination with both of them. My adoration of their mystery and horror and splendor and potential. In a way, I long ago, and without really the use of drugs, in fact, in the most sober epochs of my life, as a young adult and in my 30s, I knew the kisses of the muses, and I didn't know what to call it, because this is the true state of blissful naivete, where you haven't been separated from it, it hasn't been taken from you. So you have no way to refer to it, because there's no need to refer to it. It's not separate, right? The reference comes after the divorce, after the abstraction, after the loss, after the fall. Yeah. I mean, any of us who have sought wisdom, oh my God, what an ironic situation we will find ourselves in. Any of us who have sought wisdom and tasted of the nectars of her mouth, philo, Sophie, kissing, that saliva, the trophallaxis, right, which is the transmission of hormones and nutrients among Hymenoptera, the ants, the bees, the wasps, often between species, not often, sometimes, right? Sometimes ants and wasps may exchange trophylactic nectars, and how you can call them. There's no word in English. They are transigenic. They come before the generation of minds. They're primordial. These nectars, elixirs, filters, PHIL, TRES, I think, though sometimes spelled ERS. I was having congress with the muses before I understood they existed formally, before I knew how to speak of it. And they were reforging my mind and my dreaming, resurrecting them moment to moment in my waking life, in my creative life, in my writing and my creative play, my music, literally music, my quests. And so, I learned to kind of look down on ceremonial magic, because there's feral enchantments that seem to me to far exceed the possibilities of structured representation, ritual, and so forth. And when you have those, you would never trade them for the bones of the thing. But these days, that magic is much more rare than it was in my youth. And so, I know intimately the body and wings of my intellect. And I will gladly depart the graveyard of my waking mind, for the skies beyond it. Though I only fairly recently came to understand I was doing this. It was so natural. My trepidation of incarnate existence and somato-emotional historicity yeah, like a layered archaea, right? A layered archaea of my confusions, losses, injuries, sufferings, subjugations, enslavements, all inflected with and by the peculiarly weird perspective from outside the personal, the bizarre perspective that generates some of the branches on the trees of psychosis, paranoia, self-criticism. This the possibility of social critique, of public critique, of how others might have seen me, of how the others of myself might direct the cruel illuminations of critical judgment. Right? And this is part of why I say that is not now and never shall be justice. Condemnation and justice have nearly nothing in common. For justice, it seems to me, must be the... Okay, now I'm going to get in trouble here because I'm going to make structured language about something that has to be fluidly transcendent in its natures and in actions. It must have a body that isn't conceptual, that isn't linguistic. All right, but I'll dare. I mean, it's the first part of my name, right? Dare in. Don't get named this. If you want to get born as a human, don't go here. I was actually named for Bobby Darin, a singer, one of melodious voice. And when I was little, I used to sing all the time, and my parents would constantly try to make me stop. But I was actually fairly good at it. These days, I'm older and unpracticed, but I used to sing in a choir. Singing is really, it's so funny, a choir. In any case, where I'm going here is that actual justice uses the problems that emerge in what we might think of as criminal behavior that we would hold some individual, oh my God, to account for. Okay, wow. Now, there's sort of at least two different meanings of account here. One is to explain to us, right? Help us understand your motivations. That's one kind of an account. But the other kind is we will debit you. We will debit your life. We will subtract from you relationships, time, freedom, as if what we have in our modern societies even slightly resembles freedom. But it does compared to being in a stone box. So yeah, this debiting, this accounting, which is, oh my God, the very absence of humanity, intelligence, insight, awareness, justice, truth, the virtues. It is a catastrophic abeyance of virtue and understanding. So as I've said many times before, what we ache for when injustice has taken place is not punishment. We ache for the subtraction from the world of the forces, ideas, and situations, the traps that led what we call the perpetrator to enact the quote crime, unquote. And we've been confused to desire further poison. We've been poisoned. The poison killed our heart. And now we want to make more poison and poison 1,000,000 hearts. Poison the future, poison history. Just lay waste to the origins of our humanity, our souls, virtue, understanding, awareness. What we really want is the context to be healed so that such crimes become not merely unnecessary, but impossible. Right? That's what justice looks like. It looks like using the intelligence we can derive from the perpetrator as the symptom of something wrong in the water of our communal identity or failure to establish it, to sustain it truly. Wow. These people are making floral wreaths. I'm so jealous. It's awesome. Huh. Oh my God, what's the, is this a Greek symbol on the blanket? Sure looks like it. Wow. It's amazing. They're actually being human together. It's fucking awesome. I love this. By the way, one form of justice doesn't concern itself with history at all. It concerns itself with re-beautifying the present in such a way that the integrity and profound beauty of the future becomes repossibilized, right? Resurrected from its, cascade of falling off 19 different cliffs of vengeful stupidity and ignorance. Yeah, that's what they're doing up there. That's celebration. I don't know the etymology of the word justice or the word crime or perpetrator or celebration. I understand alphabetically some things about these words, but I'm not going to descend into that labyrinth at the moment. Rather, I will stay in the path. But what those humans up there are doing with their laughter and mutuality and joyful communality and floral, wreathing each other's, literally their heads, right? They're wreathing each other's heads with flowers. Think about what this actually means, all right? It's very astonishing. Because on the one hand, they are wreathing their heads with magical substances comprised over trillions and trillions of lifetimes of these plants, without which we would not exist. So these plants are the progenitors. In a sense, the fairies and the elves are the spirits of these plants and their relationships and their histories with the land and the mountains and the skies and the waters. Okay? So they are wreathing each other's heads just for a moment in joyful mutual celebration and promotion, right? They are raising each other up in the light of the sun on the top of the Strawberry Hill in San Francisco, the place, named after Francis of Assisi, who probably actually was amazingly virtuous and brilliant and perhaps even holy human being, regardless of, the fact, has nothing to do with the fact of the association, which cohorts we would associate him with and why. Right? I mean, it could have a little to do with it, but yeah, it's just... So yeah, they're up there wreathing each other's heads and drinking wine and celebrating and laughing and loving each other and being human together. Wow, what a healing moment. And notice that it's not formal, it's not a ritual that they're enacting. It's spontaneous, it's improvised. And, it's probably someone's birthday, or maybe someone was just married, or maybe someone had a child. Or maybe they were just like, hey, it's Saturday. It's Saturn, it's the day of Saturn, STR, right? Sigma, Tau, Rho, as Amun would say. Yeah, Sigma, Tau, Rho. Yeah, so beautiful and inspiring and evocative of memory. They are wreathing each other's foreheads with flowers. And one of them knows how to do this in an expert way. They have probably hemp vines or strings that are being soaked in a liquid to make them especially pliable. And then they had just baskets of flowers to weave into the vines. So brilliant. So one of the kinds of justice is that we go forward from here in remembrance of mutual beauty and origin. Think about that. Right? No historical damnations, indictments. Because think about this. If you have to preserve the history of wrongdoing as you walk forward into life and the potentials of your more than merely human life, if you have to preserve all those indictments and, equivocate over them and punish them and, what the problem with that is there are certain kinds of burden that get heavier by a matter of, geometric expansion, right? Like exponential. They get exponentially heavier each moment that you continue to preserve them. And we don't notice this because the urge to preserve them is one of the lethal games that's smuggled into our consciousness along with during the processes of enlanguaging and enculturation as children. We think that English comes with no baggage. Nothing like that is even possibly true. The opposite is true. There are, there are vast warehouses of lethal tropes, right? Figures of speech, metaphor, simile. trying to think of some, but I'm not dwelling in the warehouses at the moment. I'm dwelling above them, so it's hard for me to dip down and grab exemplars. All kinds of courtroom mind tropes, war mind tropes, vengeance tropes. But just think of how metabolically, energetically, and spiritually expensive it is to preserve harms. And some will say, well, you can't just ignore them. Okay, maybe, sometimes. But actually, you can do this thing that's transcendentally useful, which is not to take offense in the first place. And if you've noticed you've taken offense, you're going to have to carry that. You sure you want that? Do you go to the store ever? Did you ever once go to the mall or the grocery store and find the most disgusting, heaviest thing you could find, right? A box of rotten, dead rat corpses or something, right? Huge box, it weighs like 3 tons. And you carry that thing home and you drag it along with you for the rest of your... Not once ever did you do this, right? So why do we do this psycho-emotionally? Why do we decide to take offense? It's the most expensive thing you could take, and it grows catastrophically more expensive the longer you preserve it. And I hear, in the background the voices of those of us who have suffered actual indignities and catastrophic harms or rape or, horrifying violence or murder. I hear their voices saying, what, shall we just forget it? No. But what are we going to do with it? What will we make of it? The fact that something that happened to me was horrifyingly bad. I mean, recently something happened that I definitely took offense to. A doctor, specifically a doctor at Ocean Park Health Center, Chan, overtly denied that an episode in my medical history ever took place. So, this didn't happen. And I was like, first of all, who are you again? It'd be like someone saying, that a mother didn't give birth to her child, or that she never had a child, or something. Not that my injury is my child. I'm not trying to make that association. I'm just saying that it actually took place, that I was treated for a specific illness by a specific doctor at a specific time, and she just overtly said, nope, never happened. Can't have happened. There's no such diagnosis, blah, 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 blah. I found it very offensive. I wrote her a letter saying, this is alarming, your behavior. I'm not sure that a doctor, I mean, you can see why I was offended. But in this moment, as I'm remembering this experience, which I conceive of as a violation, right? The whole of my identity begins to collapse into something that can be violated. Is that liberty? Is that virtue? Is that intelligence? Is that insight? Is that truth? Why would I even take the time to take offense? Now, in some cases, it's reasonable for us to assert what we today talk about as boundaries. But if this becomes our fascination, woe, W-O-E, be unto us. If our fascination and our obsession becomes the maintenance of boundaries in a world of real and imagined violations, our humanity will collapse into an uninhabitable skeleton of doubt, confusion, despair. Right? We must live beyond what happens to us and our possible interpretations, and we also must speak up when when a violation is tangibly real and not just imagined or a projection. But again, the obsession with I'm just a magnet for the violation of, whatever it may be, isn't a livable identity. There's not enough there, inside there, to dwell in it. So I certainly recognize the urge in some cases for something resembling redress of wrongdoing, but it's a very, very dangerous balancing game. And most often in modern society, that game becomes malignant quickly. We have the wrong idea. We think there are individuals there's all kinds of ridiculous pre-existing conditionality that is nonsensical and is the result of the terrifying reflections of isolation, right? Which could be literally understood as meaning I am so late. I am behind time. Time is way ahead of me. Relation is way ahead of me. I am alone, and my cohort is it's so far ahead of me that I don't belong to it anymore. Isolate, ion. That ion means a self and also a particle, and possibly a particle that transmits or preserves something. In the sense that I am here highlighting creatively. There's so much for us to learn and recover and celebrate. We should be very careful. Life is short. Existence is brief. We should make it beautiful together with and for each other in the history and future of life and our peoples. Fundamentally, these are one people, one family. That's all there is. On this tiny little rock, this moist rock floating around in time-space. This is our home. This is our body. These are our people. There's no other people. And the idea of the individual, as we ridiculously are tortured by it today, people are like, oh, he's a fucking communist. No. I'm trying, how many of your cells in your body are individuals? Let me ask you this. Does it matter at all, their individuality, if... Wow. This is really cool. Does their individuality matter at all if the body dies? What are you going to make of their individuality then? Funny, the photograph I've just taken will probably become the photo I use to for this recording later. This idea of individuals and their rights is exemplary of the loss of communal of the context, of the meaningful context of our humanity over time. As our context became abstract, representational, commercial, domineering, viral, crispy, falsifications of the possibility of meaningful communal experience, roles, identity, behavior. So one of the things I saw up on top of the mountain, or the little hill, Strawberry Hill, was a reenaction of that possibility, however brief and ephemeral, not even more powerful, right, for all of its brevity. Even more powerful for its inability to fundamentally change, right? It's like it's one droplet in an ocean, but that droplet shines so brightly that the entire ocean is transformed in its spirit, if not its physical activity, right? And so those droplets matter. That's what I call real. And it's easy to forget this because, you know, we look in our modernity and we see, you know, a trillion, I'm going to stop saying my pause phrase. We see a trillion violations. I'll just pick one. Microplastics. Trillion violations per second. What can we do? Is there even a we to do things? No, there isn't. And if we form a we to do things, it's going to be like attempting to eat the moon or swallow the ocean, won't it? And so it seems that the possibility of enacting change is prohibited. There's no real way. And a number of my friends have spoken to me about this. I'll mention particularly Sean, who is working with Pause AI, and expressed his despair. What can we do? We can't stop it. And I explained to him the principle that I was orbiting here, which is that when we live beautiful lives and we witness and speak together for each other, for the history and future of life on our world and of beings, of all beings, when this is done with authenticity and passion and love, that always matters. It's not necessarily that the victors in a situation are favored of the gods as we might imagine. And there's something above the gods. Above the gods. There's something beyond the gods that even they must obey. And this is the principle for which they executed Socrates. That he dared. They accused him of atheism because he said something resembling that even the gods must obey the spirit of truth. Even the gods are subject to this. And this was the spear point they used for his indictment and prosecution. He was an oracle. He was a male oracle. But instead of declaring wisdom, he fomented it. He fermented it among the people. He would bring them together in the Quora and ferment the nectar of wisdom from within their hearts and spirits. And this made him lethal to the fictions that then ruled Athens. The warmongers, the weapon makers, Plato's parents, Plato's father, his brothers, his family. We should take these matters gravely, with grave seriousness, and attend them carefully. The possibilities of the spirit of democracy the spirits from which democracy originated, those possibilities still exist today. Unenacted, overlooked, falsified, counterfeited. And democracy doesn't just mean the voting of idiots. It's not the idea at all. I don't actually know what it is, but I can say how I conceive of it, which is the communal preservation and purification of the context of our relationships, such that it becomes possible to not merely know what is true and good and do that, but also to avoid what is lethal and malignant and destroys history in the future, and falsifies it and counterfeits it and sells us the remains of it at ever-increasing prices, destroying the mothers and the children and the fathers and the ancestors and the progeny. That must be avoided. So these are my thoughts for the day. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to speak them and share them with you. I hope you find them inspiring and that you are inspired enough to become historical, perhaps to learn the ancient Greek and other ancient languages, but particularly the Greek, and to ask questions of the oracles, to ask the imperative questions that you brought to your human incarnation and your more than human existence, your more than merely human existence, that is precious and noble in its essence, that is beautiful in its origin, and transcendental in its natures. May your paths and relations, questions, and dreams be blessed. Bye-bye for now.